Hello everyone, welcome back, or if you're new here, welcome to my channel. In this video, we're going to set up a brand new watercolor palette that is absolutely compact and easy to carry and fits into your purse or pockets. I'll share with you my color choices and the right way to set up a palette so that you can create your own palette in case you need to travel light somewhere. Before we get into the video, look guys, the cherry blossoms are all gone. Okay, I'm gonna head back inside. I have been using this large 36 wells watercolor palette for a long time now and took this along with me even when I was traveling. But sometimes it is not feasible to take such a larger palette for a shorter trip or when you have limited space in your luggage. I haven't set up a new watercolor palette in nearly 2 years and I think I might feel uncomfortable to use a limited palette. But it is all about learning and moving out of your comfort zone. And I thought that our upcoming trip would be the best opportunity for me to test this out. I told Sandeep that I will not take any of my paints for this trip, but I feel so guilty to travel without any of my paints. So I'm gonna take this tiny little thing. Shh, don't tell him. I think I'll surprise him with this when we reach there. Now that I have decided to seriously upgrade my painting skills and make more sketches, and paint my heart out, I thought it would be great if we set up a new palette together. First of all, let us have a look at the most essential supplies that you will need for setting up this palette. You will need an empty watercolor palette which is compact and small. You can choose any size you want depending upon the number of colors you want to set up. I'll be using the small tin palette which is originally from Art Philosophy, as you can see, but you can get these from Amazon at a very cheaper price. I'll leave some links for you in the description below. Alternatively, you can use any tin palette available at your disposal. For example, this tin that came along with the Hanimule postcards is something that I have used in the past for paints from Art Philosophy tubes. Next thing you will need are some empty pans. I'll be using a mix of full pans and half pans for this purpose, but you can choose to add all half pans as well, which will let you have more colors in your palette. Since my main aim is to work with a limited number of colors from my usual process, I'm sticking to mostly full pans here. Another reason why I'm using full pans is to increase the longevity of my brushes. If you intend to use a larger or medium-sized brush at all, and sometimes prefer the entire belly of the brush to be filled with paint, the smaller half pans could over time damage the bristles of the brush as it keeps rubbing against the edges of the pan. For this reason, I always prefer the larger full pans. By the way, the best thing about this whole process is that you can choose the colors that you want and it gives you the freedom to fill whatever you want into these pans rather than going for some pre-made palette like this from the manufacturer. Obviously, to fill these pans, you're going to need watercolor paints in tubes, which then you can squeeze out and fill into these pans. We will also need a small pointed object like a toothpick or a long needle to stir the paint and get rid of bubbles and air gaps within the pan. Lastly, keep some tissues handy so that you can wipe clean the needle each time for the next pan. I spent a lot of hours deciding and picking my colors and tested out a lot of color combinations before deciding on these final 14 shades that I wanted to use. I have tried several brands of watercolors over the years and I have decided to go with a mix of several brands for this palette, choosing the best pigments for vibrancy and the creamy nature. Of course, if you're using the smaller half pans, you will have approximately 20 to 24 colors to choose. Deciding and fixing on these colors involved a lot of decision making and took plenty of color study and color mixing sessions. If you're using a metal tin or even a plastic palette for the first time, then let me tell you something known as beading. The paint tends to bead up on the surface of the palette because the surface of the palette repels water. Instead of getting a smooth puddle of color, you're left with a number of beads at several places, which can seriously make it difficult to judge the colors as you're mixing them. One way to reduce this is to sand the palette with something that is not too hard, like a sponge or rubbing toothpaste on the same. However, these can also go away completely over time as your brushes tend to rub on it with usage. For this reason, I'll be using this palette, which I have used quite a lot and the beading has gone by now. Before I show you the 14 colors that I have chosen and my justification for the same, let's see the placement of these pans into the tin. Okay, so that means it's not going to be in a uniform way, so I'll need to figure out which colors go where. If you ever want to start with the most basic and simple palette, the obvious choice is to go with the primaries, red, yellow and blue. Choosing a warm and cool version of each of these primaries would ensure that you have the possibility to mix the most variety of colors. So, transparent yellow, lemon yellow, pyrrole red, quinacridone rose, ultramarine blue and halo blue. The next thing I wanted in my palette was to have some earth tones, because there was no way I could mix the earthy tones and desaturate the vibrancy of the yellow and red shades that I added. So I have included in yellow ochre and burnt sienna into my palette. If you'd like to know more about watercolor pigments, their properties, color theory, and how these colors come together in the split primary color wheel, then I have a Skillshare class on the same topic. If you're new to Skillshare, you can get a 14-day free trial with the link in the description box and get access to all the classes in Skillshare at once. This 8-color palette in itself is the most versatile palette that you could use, and you'll be able to mix thousands of colors from this. Any color that you add into your palette now are convenience colors or shades that you feel you would rather have in your palette than mix them. Pick out any shades that you absolutely love and add it to your palette. The best way to find these colors is to practice painting using these 8 shades for a month or 2, and then single out the colors that you feel you're mixing up again and again. Additionally, if there are colors that you keep trying to mix but can never get the perfect shade, but some brand has this color shade that you're looking for, then add it to your palette. For me, they are transparent orange, violet, lavender, phthalo green, cobalt turquoise, and neutral tint. Transparent orange that I have here is a beautiful single pigment color and is not made by mixing red and yellow together, and for this reason I love it. Phthalo green is one similar pigment, and because my brand colors are teal and turquoise shades, I had to have this in my palette. Phthalo blue and phthalo green together contribute to the best turquoise shades. Cobalt turquoise is the opaque turquoise version and is perfect for details and some color blasts at random places in the painting. This violet is yet another single pigment color, and although I could have mixed a color mostly similar to this one, I would rather have it in my palette. And of course, lavender is the opaque version of violet, and I seriously cannot do without lavender in my palette. It just creates such amazing mixes with yellow ochre and burnt sienna. This neutral tint shade is one of the darkest pigments I have and is perfect for grays and neutral colors when I need them. And lastly, the thing to note about yellow pigment is that to get a cool yellow, it is quite easy because all you need to do is to add a drop of blue to the same. Hence, I'm replacing my transparent yellow and lemon yellow with a mid-yellow Aurelian, which leaves me additional space for another pigment. I'm going to add Jaune Brilliant there, which is similar to Naples yellow and is perfect for sunsets along with orange. I decided to place all the warm tones and the earth tones on one side, that is the yellows, red, oranges, and my yellow ochre and burnt sienna. And I wanted to make sure that my blue is nowhere near my yellows because I didn't want to contaminate it while painting. So I've placed the blue furthest away from the yellow where these pans would go. And the obvious choice for me for other colors here were these two, the neutral tint and the cobalt turquoise. Because for the two small pans, I wanted to make sure it would be the colors that I would need less, which were these two, Jaune Brilliant and Dioxazine Violet, which obviously leaves me with Halo Blue and Lavender on the right side. Since I intend this to be my travel palette, I'm noting down the names and the pigment numbers of the colors so that I'll know which is which color if I ever keep this palette aside and come back to it after several weeks or months in the future. I'm using a micron pen size 8 for this purpose as it's got a thicker nib. Alright, so let's fill up these pans. For each of these full pans, I'm going to fill up by squeezing from the tube into it, making sure to cover the corners as much as possible because that's where the air bubbles mostly form. I'll work my way to the top and make sure that the pan is filled to just below the brim so that it's easy for me to stir the paint in it and not spill out. Then, I'll take the needle and try to spread the paint around and give it a nice stir, which will get rid of any air bubbles that may have formed. It also helps to mix up the pigment if the binder has separated away inside the tube. And then I'm placing this right away into the tin palette. I'm going to repeat this for all the 14 colors. As you squeeze out the paint and add to the pans, you will notice that some paints are more flowy in nature while some of them are harder or a creamy consistency. This is because different manufacturers make them differently, as well as due to the nature of different watercolor pigments. Setting up your palette in itself is a satisfying process, and seeing it coming together was amazing to watch. Even though it's small, I'm really excited to be working with limited colors because this way I'll increase my color theory knowledge and be able to mix colors that are usually not in my palette. This is the right path to finding your artistic style because when you have a limited palette, you stick to those colors and end up having a color theme for your paintings. I am now wondering why I didn't take this step before. Alright, so here is my travel palette all ready and set up. The next step is the hardest thing to do, which is wait for it to completely dry. Depending upon the environmental conditions where you live in, it's going to take somewhere between 3 to 5 days for it to completely dry up. So keep it somewhere tucked away from the sunlight and moisture. So I've kept mine up here, which is away from the sunlight because the window is here and sunlight's gonna come in, but I guess that area is safe there. Otherwise, you could put it in a cupboard if you want, you know. Here is the swatch card for these colors. I made it in the shape of the palette and the pans inside, but I probably won't keep it inside the tin because when I'm painting outside, there won't be a place for this, and there's a high chance the wind is going to blow it away. Alright, so it's been a few days and I'm going to take out the palette and see if it's dried. Hey, so here is my final mini watercolor travel palette. I hope this gives you plenty of ideas to set up your own and be creative with your watercolor process and style. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Let me know in the comments what are those colors that you can't live without in your palette. So it's time for me to go pick up my son. So I'm gonna go to the nursery right now. But don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more art related videos and studio vlogs from me. See you in my next video. Bye bye.